I don't even know why I'm writing this. Maybe to get it off my chest. Maybe to get advice. Maybe just to yell into the void. Because if I keep this frustration bottled up any longer, I'll explode. I'm not sad. That ship has sailed. I'm angry at her nerve and her timing and the sheer audacity of it all. 3 years ago, my wife Eve, 29 female, 26 at the time, walked out on me, 32 male now, to be with some guy named Todd, 29 male. Yeah, Todd, the kind of guy who refers to himself in third person and thinks buying NFTTS makes him a real entrepreneur. I didn't even know about the affair until after she left. She just sat me down one night and told me she didn't love me anymore and she was leaving me for someone else. I begged and cried and was frankly pathetic, but she left anyway. For a considerably long time afterwards, I was shattered as a person. I went through the motions still and didn't quit my job or anything, but I was a wreck. The best way I can put it is that the betrayal clung to me like a second skin. I knew our marriage had issues, because what marriage doesn't, but I never expected it to end with her trading in 5 years of love and commitment for a dude she met at a startup pitch night. I didn't understand it. She had told me not even 6 months before how lucky she felt to have me, how safe, how steady. I wasn't flashy. I didn't do grand romantic gestures, but I showed up every day. Apparently, that doesn't really mean much. Todd was all ideas and charm. The kind of guy who posts inspirational quotes on LinkedIn, which yes, I will admit to stalking early on, and thinks he's a philosopher because he skimmed half a self-help book. He sold her some dream of fast money, a glamorous life and adventure, and she bought it. Left behind the life we built together, our apartment, our routines, the dog we adopted, everything for some fantasy that popped like a soap bubble the second things got hard. So, now fast forward to a few weeks ago, and the reason I'm writing this, I found out from a mutual friend that Todd is gone. Vanished, apparently. Also, I came to hear that Eve and Todd had a daughter together. Fake name, who's two now. Todd's gone though, and so is his money. Packed a bag, left a note, the whole cliche. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel some twisted sense of satisfaction. Not joy. This isn't a soap opera, but like a grim satisfaction that karma eventually makes the rounds, you know. I tried not to think about it though, because I'm not a sadist, and I have no real reason to care about any of that. What happened between us already did enough damage to me anyway. I didn't want to reopen those wounds. She made her choice. Let her live with it. Let her dig herself out or don't. Not my problem until today. Sarah, my sister, 29, female, just called me. She told me that Eve showed up at her house. Out of nowhere, no warning. She just showed up crying, asking Sarah for my number or my address or anything really. The thing about Sarah is that she used to be Eve's best friend. They met during orientation week in college and were inseparable. They roomed together, studied together, and went backpacking across Europe together after graduation. When I first met Eve, it was through Sarah. At the time, I thought I'd hit the jackpot. A girl who was beautiful, smart, driven, and who already got along with my sister. It felt like fate. When everything came crashing down, when the truth about the affair came out, Sarah was livid, not just for me, but for the betrayal of their friendship. She confronted Eve once, just once, then ghosted her entirely. Blocked her on everything, never spoke her name again. She's always had my back. So to hear that Eve showed up at her house of all places was surreal and terrible. Sarah said she was a mess too. Like no makeup, puffy eyes, barely holding it together mess. Kept saying she needed to talk to me and had made a huge mistake. Now everything was falling apart and I was the only person who could help her. Blah blah. The desperation practically dripped off her, apparently. Sarah didn't buy it for a second because Sarah has a brain. She told me Eve was relentless, though. Kept begging, repeating herself, saying she couldn't do this alone and she'd always loved me and never should have left. Started asking if I was seeing anyone or if I'd ever thought about her and stuff. It was like she'd built up this whole fantasy in her head where she just shows up and I sweep her into my arms. Except that's not how it works. Not anymore. Sarah flat out told her to leave because she wasn't going to betray me by giving my cheating ex-wife any contact info, and Eve had burned every bridge she had, and Sarah wasn't about to help her climb back onto dry land now that she was drowning. Unfortunately, Sarah also told me she didn't think Eve was done. If she went through the trouble of showing up at her house after 3 years of silence, she was desperate enough to keep trying. It's likely that she might reach out to mutual friends, old coworkers, or even dig around online to find out where I live now. So, that's why I'm writing this, because I'm bracing for the next knock on the door, the next random DM, the next attempt to claw her way back into my life. I'm pissed. I'm pissed that she thinks she can just show up and erase the past 3 years and pretend our history is a page she can rewrite now that life didn't go the way she planned. Why the hell does she think she can cry to the people I love and expect sympathy after discarding me like I was nothing? Honestly, I'm all so pissed about the sheer arrogance of thinking she still gets access to me. She made her choice. She gambled everything we had and she lost. Now she wants to come crawling back. Not because she loves me, not because she's sorry, but because the guy she left me for turned out to be exactly what everyone warned her he was. And don't get me wrong, I feel bad for her kid. Dot didn't ask to be born into this. She didn't choose a flaky dad or a manipulative mother. But that doesn't mean I'm obligated to clean up the mess. If Eve really wanted to make things right, she would have gone through the hard work years ago. She would have apologized when it mattered. But she didn't. She was happy to disappear with Todd and live out her little fantasy. Now that it's turned into a nightmare, she thinks she can drag me back into the drama and pretend it's redemption. It's not. She had 5 years of my life. She threw them away without a second thought. And now suddenly, she remembers how good I was. Please, I'm not the same man she left. And she's not the same woman I once loved. Whatever connection we had died the moment she chose someone else over me. I don't know what she's going to do next, but I'm locking everything down, change my passwords, tighten my privacy settings, reached out to mutuals to let them know not to give out my info. I refuse to be dragged back into the chaos she created for herself. And for the record, I don't hate her. That would imply I still care. What I feel is disgust, frustration, a deep, unshakable sense of what the hell makes you think this is okay. Maybe I sound bitter, maybe I am, but at least I'm not delusional. She doesn't get to rewrite the ending. Not this time. Comments. You prick sticklax. You say you're not bitter, but then this entire post reeks of bitterness and self-righteousness. Yes, people make mistakes. Big ones, painful ones, but that doesn't mean they're beyond redemption. You act like you've never messed up in your life, like you're some flawless moral compass here to pass judgment. Instead of showing compassion or grace, you immediately jump to punishment. You don't know what Eve went through, what led to her choices, or how much she might be trying to fix things. But I guess that doesn't matter to you, does it? You sound more interested in staying mad than in healing or forgiving. It's easy to feel superior when you're the one who got left behind, but this post doesn't make you look noble. It makes you look petty. Update 1. So, it started. A bunch of you have been expecting an update, and apparently God didn't want to disappoint. So, after that call from my sister, I changed my Instagram privacy settings just in case. I don't usually post much, but I figured I should lock things down anyway. Tightened my account, removed some old followers I didn't recognize, and made sure my stories were only visible to close friends. It felt a little paranoid at first, but now I'm glad I did it, because a few days later I started getting DMs from random accounts. No posts, no followers, no profile pictures, just usernames like at FlowerDay93, at HopefulM89, at Lost Heart Soul, and so on. All of them brand new, obviously burner accounts. I didn't even bother opening the messages. I just blocked them on sight. But let's be honest, who else would it be? I don't have enemies. I don't have drama. There's only one person in my past who would be that persistent about trying to get back into my life. It didn't stop there either. Another friend of mine, someone who knew both me and Eve back when we were married, texted me to say that she'd reached out to him out of nowhere, saying she was just checking in and asking how I was doing. Then not so subtly asked if he had my new number. When he said he didn't think I'd want her contacting me, she apparently got defensive and said it was important. He shut her down pretty firmly and told me about it afterward. I have to say, I'm grateful. I've heard so many stories of people whose exes manipulate their way back in with emotional messages, and more often than not, people give in out of guilt or whatever. But I've got a pretty solid group of people around me. It's hard to describe the mix of emotions I feel right now. On one hand, I'm angry that she even thinks she has the right to try this. But on the other hand, I'm also exhausted by the idea that I might have to keep dealing with this. This might be a long game for her, just testing boundaries and poking around until someone slips up and gives her what she wants. I've been building a new life that doesn't involve looking over my shoulder or rehashing old wounds, and she's trying to crash into it like a wrecking ball. Not because she loves me or misses me, but because she's miserable and wants someone to fix it for her, like always. Also, I read most of the comments on my last post. I really appreciate the supportive ones. It means a lot to feel understood, especially by strangers who don't owe me anything. It helps me feel like I'm not overreacting or imagining things here, to the people telling me I should hear her out or forgive and forget. No, absolutely not. This isn't about bitterness or revenge or holding grudges or whatever. It's about self-respect. I finally know my worth, and I'm not letting someone who discarded me once come back, just because her backup plan fell apart. I haven't responded to any of the messages. I haven't acknowledged her attempts. I don't plan to. If she somehow finds a way to contact me directly, I'll deal with it then. For now, I'm just documenting it here, putting it out into the world so that if things escalate, I have a record. I'll update if anything else happens. Hopefully, she gets the hint and fades back into the background where she belongs. But if not, I've come too far to let her drag me backwards. Update 2. Well, so much for hoping she'd go away quietly. My ex-wife showed up at my office. Pretty sure she stalked my LinkedIn, because yeah, I should have thought of that, but I didn't. And so 2 weeks after popping up at my sister's house, and a week after trying to get my number from a couple mutual friends, she just appeared outside the building where I work. I just wrapped up a long day, was heading out, and there she was. She looked awful, and I don't mean that to gloat. She genuinely looked like life had chewed her up and spat her out. She intercepted me before I could make it to my car, loudly and desperately, and drawing the kind of attention I didn't want from my coworkers, some of whom were still trickling out of the building. I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of putting on a public show. So, I told her we could walk to the coffee shop down the block and talk there. Not because I wanted to hear what she had to say, but because I didn't want her lingering around my office. We sat down and it started immediately straight into the soba story. She told me Todd left, just packed up and walked out one day. He left her and their 2-year-old daughter with nothing but a couple of bills and some unpaid rent. Apparently, he hadn't been working for months and had drained their savings on some business opportunity that went nowhere. Then he just vanished, ghosted her, blocked her on everything. She said she was blindsided. She really never imagined her affair with a hustle culture, wannabe tech bro would end like this. Then, of course, came the dramatic realization that she should have never left me because I had always been the one who really loved her, and I was the only person who had ever made her feel safe. And all the pain she was going through was making her see things clearly now. I was the best thing that had ever happened to her. It was textbook. She wanted to be rescued. She wanted me to see her as this wounded, broken person who finally understood her mistakes and had come crawling back to the man who had always stood by her. I'm not that man, though. A few years ago, I probably would have fallen for it. But not anymore. I've grown, I've learned, I've healed. I can see her clearly now. Not the love of my life, but someone who made her choices and now wants to offload the consequences. She doesn't love me. She loves the idea of me, or rather the idea of what I can do for her, now that her fantasy life has crumbled. She's not here because she misses me. She's here because she misses stability, responsibility, a working income, a co-parent, someone to plug the hole that Todd left behind. Now we get to the bad part. I asked where her kid was. She blinked like the question hadn't even occurred to her and said she left Dot at the hotel. Alone, a 2-year-old. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought maybe I misheard her, but no. She told me she just left the TV on, and Dot was napping and she needed to have this conversation and didn't want any distractions. Apparently, ambushing her ex-husband is more important than looking after her child. I'm not even a parent, but every instinct in my body was screaming that she needed to get back to that child immediately. I don't get how she could sit there and feel nothing. I didn't care about her sob story after that. I didn't even care that she was clearly trying to manipulate me. I just needed her to leave. I told her to go back to her daughter right now. I made it clear that I wasn't going to say another word until she went back. Stonewalled her until she said she'd go, but she asked for my number before she left. I gave it to her, not because I wanted her to have it, but because in that moment, I wasn't thinking about protecting my peace or maintaining distance. I was thinking about a toddler alone in a hotel room while her mother poured out a soap opera to her ex-husband. I gave her the number because I didn't want her to waste another second. If giving her that meant she'd leave and get back to Dot faster, then fine. Now I'm stuck wondering what to do next. Just blocking her again seems like the obvious move. But that little girl didn't ask to be born into this mess. She didn't ask for Todd to be a ghost or for Eve to be so completely unprepared to be a mother. I know I'm not her father and have no obligation to her, but it's hard not to think about what's best for her. She's an innocent kid being subjected to the whims of the worst person I know. I haven't responded to Eve since she left the coffee shop. I haven't opened any messages. But for the first time, I'm not just angry. I'm scared for that little girl. I've seen just how far gone Eve is, and I don't think she even realizes how dangerous her behavior has become. Update 3. I've spent a lot of sleepless nights thinking about this, about Dot, about what kind of life she's going to have with a mother like Eve. Every time I tried to put it out of my head, it came back stronger. That awful feeling in my gut. The image of a toddler alone in a hotel room, or being handed off to strangers while her mother spiraled. I could have blocked Eve, cut her off again, and told myself it wasn't my problem. But I couldn't. Not this time. Because that kid didn't ask for any of this. She didn't ask to be born into chaos. She didn't choose a neglectful mother or deadbeat father who walked out. She's innocent in all of it. And once I let that settle in my heart, I realized I couldn't just walk away and pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. So, I made a choice, a calculated one. I didn't go in guns blazing. I didn't tell Eve what I was planning. Instead, I let her think I was softening, that I was slowly warming back up to her. I replied to her texts sparingly, but just enough to keep her talking. I asked how she and Dot were managing. I asked if she needed anything, and once she started feeling comfortable, she really opened up. Man, she is a terrible parent. She said she's been letting Dot sit in front of the TV for hours, sometimes the whole day, just so she can catch up on sleep. Like parenting was some inconvenience that kept interrupting her rest. She told me she's been leaving Dot with hotel staff like cleaners, receptionists, anyone who doesn't say no, or random neighbors in the building when she needs to clear her head. That was her exact phrasing. She said it like it was normal, and that was just what parents do. Which no, it's not. She told me she's been struggling to feed Dot because she can't hold down a job, and she keeps getting fired for being late or not showing up. However, she always seemed weirdly confident that it would all work out soon because her words, not mine. Now that we're reconnecting, I don't have to do it all on my own anymore. That was her game. This whole act, the dramatics, the tears, the grand declarations of regret, all to get me to fix her stupid problems because she either runs away or gets someone else to deal with her stupidity. She started dropping hints in her messages about how it would be so good for Dot to have a real father figure again. How did Dot know all about me, which I doubt? How could she move back to our city, maybe stay with me for a while, just to get on her feet? I decided to call Child Protective Services. I gave them everything: the dates, the quotes, the screenshots, the things she'd confessed to in writing. I told them where she was staying. I told them Dot might be left alone. I didn't exaggerate or embellish because I didn't need to. The truth was bad enough. They followed up within 48 hours. They found the hotel. They did a welfare check. Dot was there alone again. This time, not even napping, just sitting on the bed crying. They took her into protective custody. I don't know where she is now, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I know she's safe. That's what matters. I was told by the CPS caseworker that she's with a temporary foster family while they begin evaluating next steps. Eve's being investigated. I assume she knows I was the one who called. She hasn't messaged me since, but I wouldn't be surprised if she tries to turn it into some kind of betrayal narrative letter. I didn't do this out of spite. I didn't do it because I wanted to punish her. I did it because someone had to protect that little girl, and no one else was stepping up. Eve can scream about how I ruined her life all she wants, but the truth is she was already doing that all by herself. I just made sure her daughter didn't have to suffer anymore for it. I know there are people out there who will say I crossed a line and it wasn't my place, or I should have just tried to help Eve instead of going behind her back. But helping Eve wasn't the priority. Saving an innocent child was. If I had to be the bad guy in someone else's story to do that, so be it. Because I can sleep now. For the first time in weeks, I can sleep. Update 4. Final update to this. Not replying to any more comments after I post this either. Thanks for the support, but let's close this chapter. Yeah, so, it's been a couple of months since CPS stepped in and removed Dot from that hotel room. A lot has changed since then. Some of it expected, some of it surprising. The biggest news, Dot's living with Todd's parents now, so anyone who is worried can calm down a little. I didn't doom her to floating around in the foster system. Don't know much about the grandparents, just basics. But from everything I've heard, they're actually good people. Retired, financially stable, and most importantly, willing to step up for their granddaughter. CPS apparently deemed them fit guardians, and after some paperwork and evaluations, Dot was placed in their custody. From what I've been told, she's doing really well. She's got her own room. She's eating 3 proper meals a day. She's got routines, toys, bedtime stories, and stability. Things she was never going to get in that hotel room, with Eve running on fumes and desperation. Eve is apparently getting supervised visitation. Once a month, that's it. Sarah says it's because she's not making much progress in her parenting classes and she's still jobless, still couch surfing, still insisting it's not her fault. I don't know if she's holding out hope for getting Dot back or if she's just too proud to admit she blew up her own life. Either way, she's not winning anyone over. Of course, she tried to paint me as the villain. She told a few mutual friends that I snitched, that I ruined her life out of spite, but Sarah was ahead of her. My sister doesn't play games. She made sure people knew what really happened. And since she knows pretty much everyone Eve knows, word got out fast. Eve's rep is toast, and most of her so-called friends have drifted off. The few who still follow her get treated to cryptic, bitter Facebook rants that barely get a single like. No job, no partner, no custody, just supervised visits and a trail of burned bridges behind her. I'm okay. Better than okay, honestly. I have peace now. No more surprise visits. No more late-night guilt spirals. No more wondering if I should have done something. I did. I stepped in when no one else would. A kid's safe because of it. And I don't have to deal with my ex-wife anymore. Win-win. As far as I'm concerned, comments you. No calm opinions. What you did took courage, not just for yourself, but for that little girl. You didn't have to get involved. You could have looked the other way, ignored the signs, and protected your own peace. But you didn't. You took a risk to make sure Dot had a chance at a better life. That's not just decent. That's heroic. It's heartbreaking that Eve couldn't be the parent Dot needed. But that doesn't mean you had to fix her mistakes. And yet, you still stepped up. You saw a child in danger and did what any responsible adult should have done. People will try to guilt you for it, but don't listen to them. You made a hard choice for the right reasons, and Dot's life is better because of it. It takes guts to do what you did, and I hope you know that. In my eyes, you're a damn hero.